Welcome to another edition of the Dual Threat Sports Podcast. We're your hosts, Micah Wright and Jaden Lewis, and the college football playoff reactions we are going to give you guys as the rankings were released a couple days ago. Pretty interesting that Georgia's number 4 over Alabama.
Yeah, that is very interesting considering they lost to a South Carolina team. And Alabama, well, they did lose to LSU, which was just last week, so we did expect them to fall. But another surprising one is at number 7, and that's Utah. You don't really expect them to be like this. I didn't expect them to be this high at all. Their only win against a ranked team was over number 17 Arizona State. They did lose at USC, and their only other good win I really see on there is BYU. But they also did beat Washington on the road.
Yeah, Washington, I think, was a big deal for them. They hadn't beaten them in years, but Washington's not that good this year. And Oregon's number 6, too, right? So, I mean, I think you could put Minnesota at 6 and ahead of Utah and Oregon because of the win against Penn State, who's number 9. I mean, you don't see Oregon and Utah's wins as good as that one, and I don't care who Minnesota's played. It was just the Penn State game alone should get them at number 6, in my opinion.
And they're also undefeated as well. I can also see putting Oklahoma probably a bit higher, but maybe above Oregon and Utah.
Oklahoma's defense is the problem. I mean, they really could have lost to Iowa State, and I mean they lost to Kansas State, who I really don't think is as good as the rankings have shown. But Oklahoma at 10, I think that's pretty fair. Penn State at 9, I think they're going to keep falling. Their only good win, I think, is against Michigan. They're not as good as people were thinking, but the fact that they were number 4 should give Minnesota a better ranking than 8 right now.
Yep.
And then 2, so LSU's number 1 with Ohio State and Clemson. I think that's what everyone thought. But Georgia at number 4 over Alabama. I think the fact that you stack up the one loss, Georgia lost to South Carolina and Alabama lost to LSU, you'd think that would put Alabama ahead of them, but I think that's an interesting choice.
And it's also weird because in the AP poll, they have Alabama ahead of Georgia, which is really interesting.
Yeah, I think that, I don't know. I mean, if Georgia wins the SEC championship now,
and they're definitely in.
Yeah, they have to be in. So Alabama, I mean, it's going to be that much harder for them to get in. I think they just have to root for LSU from here on out.
Yep, and it's also interesting to see Baylor with that weak schedule. I see why they're number 13, but they're, I think, the lowest undefeated team that's down on this list.
Yeah, Baylor, I mean, their schedule is ridiculous. I think, they beat K-State earlier in the year. I think that's their best win, really. So that's not a big surprise that they're 13. They basically have the schedule of a, mid-level conference team. But undefeated, I think you still got to keep them in the top 15. But I think they'll surely lose to Oklahoma and probably Texas, too, these upcoming games. All right, so before we move on to our next segment, we have a word from Popeyes. So the Popeyes chicken sandwich is out, and just when you thought the Popeyes menu couldn't get any better, they introduced their chicken sandwich and spicy chicken sandwich to take their menu to the next level. Popeyes has been serving the nation for nearly 50 years with the nation's best chicken, so go out and try the new chicken sandwich from Popeyes. And we also have a word from Little Caesars Pizza. So in the midst of the college football and NFL season, fans need a place to complete their game day experience. No game day is better than one with Little Caesars Pizza with a 2-liter of soda that you can get for free with code FREE2L1. That's FREE2L1 with any order of pizza. All right, so we have some big NFL news, which was kind of odd in my opinion. Colin Kaepernick is just released that the NFL invited him to a workout on Saturday in front of teams that choose to go. So I really don't know what to think of this.
Yeah, this is very strange. Colin Kaepernick, he's been out of the league for 3 years now? He hasn't been signed by a team he hasn't played since 2016. Will he be signed? That's a real good question. I don't really see a team that will think would sign him. Maybe Chicago or Carolina, one of those two teams might sign him. But yeah, that's very weird.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to owners having the final say of whether to sign him or not. He really, you look at the numbers. I think his last season with San Francisco, he had 17 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. But, the team was one of the worst in the league. I think they only had one win with him as a starter. So, he might not have looked terrible, but he just wasn't winning games in a results league like the NFL. So I don't know if one of these contending teams or teams that want to improve at quarterback will sign him. I don't think he'll play this year if he is signed. But if you're a bad team and you think fans will have your support, which I feel like the majority of fans, don't support him. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting, especially in the world of the NFL. His last year, he went 1-10 his last year, 16 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, like you said. But I think the team that he goes to would have to be like the right fit for him on the field and culturally. If you get him like a good offensive coach like Greg Roman, who's turned Lamar Jackson into a great quarterback, which was his offensive coordinator in San Francisco. If you get him in a scheme like that, I think he'll be all right. I think he's about 32 now, I think.
Yeah, he just turned 32 on November 3rd, actually. So
he can still have a few years left in him.
Yeah, if he's in good shape, that might not really matter because I think at the end of the day, they're going to sit back and say, do we really want a guy who's so controversial on our football team? And I really think, the 49ers are widely viewed as a very, because San Francisco's a very liberal city, and they're very accepting. And that's why there was kind of an outrage about them drafting Nick Bosa because he was a noted Trump supporter. But I think that's a team that would go after him. But the problem is they released him, so I don't think there's a chance that they'd want him, especially since they're doing so well.
Yeah. Before we head into our next segment, let's talk about the new Impossible Burger at Burger King. When we think of burgers, we think of meat that comes from a cow. But now Burger King has done what is thought was once impossible by introducing a burger made from plants, topped with lettuce, tomatoes, mayonnaise, ketchup, pickles, onions, and a soft sesame seed bun. And the best thing about this burger, it tastes like a normal burger with beef. It's 100% burger, 0% beef.
All right, so with that news of Colin Kaepernick, if he is able to come back on an NFL team, we have a top 5 list each of us have made of comeback athletes of all time. So I'll start with a name you might not have heard in a while, Chad Pennington, who I actually think is a high school football coach now. But Chad Pennington is the only NFL quarterback to win Comeback Player of the Year twice. He did it with the Jets and the Dolphins after the Jets dumped him. And he took the Dolphins, who were 1-15 in 2007, to a 11-5 record in 2008. And he led the league in completion percentage both of those years. So he was just a very solid NFL quarterback.
Yep. And I'm going to go with Rocky Bleier. Not many people may know who he is, but he actually shared the same backfield with Franco Harris during that Pittsburgh Steelers dynasty. But after his rookie season, he got drafted to the Vietnam War. And on August 20th, 1969, while in Vietnam, his platoon was ambushed and a grenade blew up next to him, sending stuff all down his leg and causing him to lose part of his right foot. And doctors told him that he would never play football again, but suddenly he rejoined the Steelers for camp in 1970, and he would finish his career with 3,865 rushing yards, 23 touchdowns, 136 receptions for another 1,000 yards, and also winning 4 Super Bowls.
So number 4, I have Bo Jackson, who was just a phenomenal athlete, baseball and football. And with the Raiders, I think he was everyone's favorite running back until he hurt his hip in a playoff game that ended his football career. But then he came back years later with the White Sox and ended up playing in the MLB. Briefly, he wasn't an everyday player, but he did hit a home run, I believe, in an MLB game, which was just a phenomenal feat after such a traumatic injury.
Yeah, he was probably one of the best athletes of all time. This next one is George Foreman, the famous boxer. He's most known. He fought Muhammad Ali in 1974 and lost, and then fought Joe Frazier in 1976 and won. And after 10 years out of retirement, he came back into the ring and started fighting again at the age of 38. And in 1994, at age 45, he became the oldest to win the heavyweight title.
And number 3, I'm going with Jim Plunkett, who was a number 1 overall pick with the Patriots. He was a Heisman Trophy winner when he was at Stanford, and he just had a failed career with the 49ers and Patriots, and he was just kind of looked at as a bust until the Oakland Raiders signed him, and he was a backup for many years, but he led them to 2 Super Bowls as he took over for starting quarterbacks who struggled for the Raiders and became one of just a select number to win 2 Super Bowls at quarterback.
Yep. And many people have heard this name before, Doug Flutie, the Heisman winner from Boston College, most known for the Hail Mary. Then he bounced around from the Bears and Patriots, but was out of the NFL after 1989. He then went to Canada and became probably the best CFL player of all time. Then, at the age of 36, he would make a comeback to the NFL in 1998 with the Buffalo Bills, making a Pro Bowl appearance and the NFL Comeback Player of the Year award. The next year, he would go 10-5, but got benched in the playoffs in favor of Rob Johnson, which was the Music City Miracle game. And then he would play for the Chargers and Patriots before retiring at age 43.
And then, so number 2, I have Tiger Woods. And then after him, I have Michael Jordan. Just some of the greatest athletes of all time. Tiger Woods had crazy amount of injuries over the past, up until last year. It was like 4 or 5 years of just back injuries and surgeries. And it looked like he was just never going to be the same again. But then he wins another major to add to his amazing amount of majors to try to chase Jack Nicklaus, which he still can do. But just the fact that he won another one was amazing. And Michael Jordan, after retiring to play baseball and coming back and just not skipping a beat, winning 3 straight championships after doing it his previous 3 seasons in the NBA.
And I'm going to go with another Raider, George Blanda. He played from 1949 to 1975, the longest player to ever do so. He was cut from the Chicago Bears in 1958 because George Halas was only using him as a kicker. But 2 years later, he would sign with the Houston Oilers at age 33 to play quarterback and kicker and would put up numbers that were kind of unheard of at the time in the 1960s. And then my last one is a personal one. I chose a current example, which is Dalvin Cook. His first year, as you guys may remember, that he tore his ACL real bad against the Detroit Lions. He came back the next year and still battled injuries with his hamstring, but this year he's even stronger than ever. He came back, and now he's the league's leading rusher. With NBA season underway, it's never too late to do fantasy basketball. The ESPN Fantasy app is the #1 sports fantasy app out there, and the best part about it is that it's completely free. You can sign up with friends or just join a random league of your own and keep track of your players' live updates. Go to the App Store and download the ESPN Fantasy app. It's available for both Android and Apple.
All right, so we're going to finish things off on this edition of our podcast with some NFL picks, Week 11. So tonight we have the Steelers and Browns. I think the Steelers defense has just been playing very well. I have them winning by 12, 33-21.
Yep, the Steelers defense is playing amazing. I have them beating Cleveland 17-10.
And then Jets-Redskins, it's just another tank bowl that the Jets are in, but I think they'll win it 24-13.
I'm actually going to go with Washington in a close game between Dwayne Haskins getting his first win. I think that'd be his first win, 24-22.
And then so Jacksonville at Indy, this is a toss-up. I think Jacoby Brissett's healthy. If he'll start, I think they'll win it 27-20.
Indianapolis struggled last week against Miami. I think Jacksonville wins this game 31-17.
And then I have Buffalo over Miami 21-12 and Dallas over Detroit 27-17, as well as Houston with an upset over Baltimore 34-31.
I have Miami keeping it going, winning 13-10. I have Detroit beating Dallas at home 27-20, and I have Baltimore winning an exciting game with Houston 31-28.
All right, and then Atlanta at Carolina and New Orleans at Tampa Bay. This could be another upset week in the NFC South, but I have Carolina and New Orleans winning 26-21 and 30-24.
I have Atlanta winning 28-16 over Carolina to help save Dan Quinn's job, and I have New Orleans beating Tampa Bay 27-25.
And then Minnesota hosting Denver. I think they'll blow them out. Denver is really struggling. I have them 27-0. And then San Francisco winning over Arizona 28-17, as well as New England with the revenge game of a former Super Bowl opponent, 23-20 over Philly.
Yeah, I have Minnesota winning easily 24-6. I have San Francisco and Arizona playing at a close, probably exciting game, 26-20. And I have New England getting their revenge from the Super Bowl, 25-17.
And then the Bengals at Oakland. The Bengals, it's a tough matchup. I think they fall to 0-10, 35-17, Raiders victory. And then the Rams host the Bears. This is kind of a loser leaves home game. I have the Rams winning 20-14. And the Chiefs Monday night in Mexico over the Chargers 34-28.
Yeah, I have Oakland easily taking down Cincinnati 34-17. The Rams, Bears, both teams that are struggling, but I have the Rams coming out this one at home 20-10. And I have the Chiefs beating the Chargers in an offensive game 40-24.
All right, this concludes this edition of the Dual Threat Sports Podcast. We thank you for tuning in. This is Micah Wright and Jaden Lewis.